No candlelight, no soft music, no soft lighting. Just a cold metal chair, a gaudy name tag reading Mary Fay, recently divorced, and a digital clock running down from 5 minutes. The camera never even had to zoom in to reveal the tension. It pulsed in the air. Mary sat erect, grudging a smile that was too large to be real. You could catch it in her eyes. This was no excitement. It was a woman trying to persuade herself that she hadn't made another error. She sat across from Carl, mid-50s, polo shirt, divorced 3 times, the kind of man who glanced at his phone more than he glanced at humans. "So," he growled, not even glancing up, "what do you do?" Mary hesitated. "I used to belong to a well-known family." Her emphasis skated the line between honesty and damage control. Carl chuckled, unimpressed. "Don't tell me, reality TV." He reclined and moaned. "Can't abide that trash." The timer beeped. 5 minutes wasted. Mary smiled graciously, said "thank you," and returned to her empty chair at the snack table. And that's when you could see it, the subtle realization in her eyes. This was a mistake. Season 20 had promised redemption, rebirth, new love stories. But for Mary, it was fast becoming the same old cruel joke. Hook. Then something occurred that no one, not even the producers, saw coming. The second man walked in, tan, suave, and with a lot of practice. Mary swept her blouse aside and gave him her best imitation of a smile. But the stamp of her foot beneath the table said more than words. This wasn't about love. This was about evidence. Evidence she could still be wanted, that she could still be chosen. For behind her calm face, an old shadow still existed. Cody's silence. The silence that had haunted her for so long. This 5-minute date was nothing about love. This was about surviving. Hook, and surviving doesn't always mean staying alive. Sometimes it just means remaining on your feet. Then it happened. The next fellow walked in. His name tag was Adam. But the moment Mary saw him, her face faltered. He tilted his head, a hint of a smirk spreading. "Mary Brown," he breathed, his name rolling off his tongue like a blade. "Sister Wives Mary Brown, maybe?" She forced a smile. The world froze. This was the worst nightmare for every celebrity, to be seen somewhere she wished to go incognito. She laughed awkwardly. "That was a long time ago." Adam sat forward, eyes flashing. "I used to work for your husband," he said. "Flagstaff allows office." And like that, her breath was trapped. The past she'd worked so long to cover up had stepped right up to her table. "Small world, huh?" Adam grinned. The timer hadn't even begun. Mary looked over at a producer, pleading silently for an escape. Too late. Cameras were rolling. The show's catchphrase was "finding love again." But this wasn't love. This was exposure. "So," Adam rested his arms against his chest, grinning. "You single now? Or still sharing?" It wasn't a question. It was a knife disguised as charm. The producers loved it. You could practically hear the voiceover they'd add in later. Whether your past returns to the table, whether Mary runs or rises. Her smile vanished. "Do you come here to date," she said quietly, "or to excavate?" Adam shrugged. To see if the woman behind the camera is as genuine as the one who stayed with a man who embarrassed her on national television. The tension was palpable. The timer beeped, but Mary moved not at all. Not today. Hook. Sometimes the clock runs out, but the truth keeps ticking. When Adam wandered off, self-satisfied, the camera lingered on Mary's face. And for the first time this season, the audience saw something real. Pain. Raw, old, unadulterated pain. She got up slowly, picked up a red file labelled Confessionals Round 1, and went outside. The cameraman accompanied her. The voice of a producer crackled in her ear. "Say something real," he urged. "That's what they need." Mary looked straight into the camera. "You want real?" she stammered. Here's real. I was married for years, endured, not loved. I let a man fire me on television, and now here I am, as if I'm somehow courageous enough to do it again. She dropped the folder on the floor. I don't need another man. I need peace. But clearly, peace doesn't make television. Silence. The crew even ceased activity. Within, the other players continued laughing, flirting, clinking glasses. But outside, Mary was no longer part of the show. She was escaping it. She stood up, dried her hands, and growled, "Let's get on with it." Hook, but before she could move another step, her phone buzzed. A text, no signature. "You looked beautiful tonight. I wish I'd said more." Then another. "I'm still here, still watching." Her heart hung. She didn't have to read the name to recognize who it was. Cody. And that's when it hit her. This wasn't a text, it was a warning. Because if Cody was watching, that meant her next move could ruin the entire season's plot. The message burned in her hand. The handwriting, the voice, the timing. All too familiar. Cody's signature move, showing up the minute she started to get back on her feet. The cameras tracked her going back inside, but she wasn't the same woman who had exited. This wasn't fear anymore. This was anger. She strode past the tables, into the green room, still mic'd. "He texted me," she growled. A producer looked up, his face pale. "Who?" "Cody," she said. "He's watching, maybe sent someone here." Their faces drained of colour. Adam's smirk, his flawlessly rehearsed tone, all suddenly made sense. Mary ripped off her mic, handed it to the assistant and said coldly, "If he wants a show, I'll give him one, but this time it won't be about him." Meanwhile, a few blocks away, a black SUV idled in the dark. Inside, Cody Brown watched the live feed from his phone, jaw clenched, fury in his eyes. He didn't know that yet, but Mary wasn't coming back as an actress. She was coming back as a reckoning. And when she sat down for her next date, the man she sat across from smiled. Not a stranger this time, but a fan. A fan with questions. Dangerous ones. Marcus was in his late 30s. Smooth voice, tidy shirt, courteous smile. But when he put out his hand over the table, it shook. "It's dreamlike to meet you," he said, voice too genuine to be offhand. Mary smiled again, weary but courteous. "Good to meet you, Marcus." But something flickered behind his eyes. Not admiration, but understanding. The kind that comes from years of watching, studying, and truly seeing the person behind the screen. "You've been through a lot," he whispered. "More than they ever showed." Mary froze. "You watch the show?" "Every episode," he nodded. "Even the ones they didn't broadcast, the leaks, the international edits. I know what they tried to hide, what Cody told me that day in Flagstaff, and what Robin wouldn't tell me when she could have." The words slammed into her like a wave. Marcus wasn't there to flirt. He was there to witness. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I had to tell you, you didn't deserve what they did to you, and showing up for that family after all, that wasn't weakness, that was strength." The timer wasn't even on, but Mary already felt the walls closing in, not from pain, but something deeper, acknowledgement. The sort that wounds more deeply because it's so rare. "Thank you," she gasped. Her voice trembled. Marcus rummaged through his jacket pocket and pulled out a small laminated badge. "I bought this at a fan auction," he said. "It was yours." He turned it over, written on the back, 2017, Cuts to Family Therapy. "The year they informed you that one-on-ones were too expensive," Marcus explained. "The same year Robin hired a personal coach. The year you started to disappear from group forums." Mary's eyes settled on the tag. Her fingers shook, not of fear, but recognition. And then she held on tightly to it, claiming a piece of herself she didn't realize she'd lost. "You're not here for a date," she breathed. Marcus nodded. "Mine, no. I'm here to remind you who you were before they rewrote your story." Hook, And before anyone was aware, the dating show was no longer a dating show. It was now an intervention. One of the producers gasped off camera. What had just happened was not fluff TV. It was something raw, edgy, and real. This material would never be another Finding Love Again montage. No, it would be cut together as evidence of survival on the part of a woman who had been underestimated for far too long. The real disaster wasn't the men sitting across from Mary. It was the man who had once persuaded her that she could not stand up without him. The laminated tag was still clutched in her hand long after Marcus had left. Such a delicate, thin piece of paper, and it contained more truth than 10 years of constructed confessionals. 2017 therapy cuts, 3 simple words that had characterized the period her voice was stifled, packaged and placed on Moving On. Mary folded the tag into her purse, and her hand wrinkled another token, a wrinkled yellow sticky note. Be open, smile more, don't talk about Cody. She looked at it. Producer's notes, a script disguised as advice, proof that even her sorrow had been scripted. Mary looked around the room. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking ice, all of it seemed insincere now, none of it real. Hook, and that's when she announced she was no longer playing their game. She rose, walked straight past the other tables, and into the green room where the producers gathered in front of their monitors. Cut the rest of the speed dates, she said brusquely. One of them winced. Mary, we need more footage. You have enough, she interrupted him. Now I want something back. The room grew quiet. What are you saying? My binder, she said. My records, my old interviews, the deleted interviews. I know you archived them. I want it all. The producers exchanged nervous glances. That is not standard procedure, one grumbled. Then break procedure, she said, or I walk. Her voice was firm, not mad, not pleading, just decisive. For the first time, she didn't sound like a cast member. She sounded like she authored her own book. A voice crackled through a headset. She's serious, someone whispered. Give her what she wants. Just keep her on camera. Hook. And with that, the dating show meltdown they'd gotten viewers to suspend their disbelief for became something much more interesting. Mary's makeover. Within minutes, she was taken into a cold, dimly lit room deep in the rear of the studio. Metal shelves stacked with hard drives, boxes, and stacks of unedited confessionals lined the room. The vast majority of the cast were none the wiser that the room even existed. Mary did, however. A tense aide stood at her elbow, clipboard clutched, adopting an attitude of inspection. Mary shooed him away. Third shelf, she breathed, scanning shelves. Green drive, labelled 1317 RAW. She stroked her fingers over the dust on a minuscule drive and inserted it into a laptop. What she found on the screen stopped her heart. 100 of clips, uncut, unfiltered, unmanipulated. Headings such as too emotional, contradicts Cody, not supportive enough. And then, one caption stood out to her. Mary Faye, unused therapy request, Flagstaff. She clicked play. On the screen came her 2019 self, red eyes, trembling voice but honest. I requested to continue with therapy, she said in a whisper, because I wasn't being heard. Cody said it was too expensive, but the same week, Cody and Robin hired a life coach. Mary gasped. The video was never previewed. The real reason? It didn't fit the narrative. It didn't sell the fairy tale. Behind her, the assistant whispered nervously, "You're not to take anything from this room." Mary turned, pulled out a small flash drive from her sweater pocket, and smiled. "You think I arrived unprepared?" As editors cut together another montage of groan-inducing laughter and maudlin music, Mary Brown was doing something much more subversive. She was reclaiming her reality, and she had not even started yet, because hidden away in a neglected storage locker in Utah was one more secret, a red, leather-bound binder, padlocked, unopened for years. Christine had hers, Janelle had her statements of account, but Mary's Mary's binder was the first one, the one nobody ever knew existed. In between its pages were receipts for years, notes, producer memos, and text transcripts that told the real story. The one that TLC never wanted the world to see. Hook. And once Mary opened up that binder, there'd be no turning back. In the binder were shards of a life that no other person had ever seen. Letters Mary had written to Cody but never sent. Family event photos in which she'd been edited out. Email exchanges labelled urgent, in which Cody had demanded Robin himself be brought to the head of the line for TLC paid therapy sessions, while Mary's were quietly removed from consideration. She hadn't put these items away to attack anyone. She'd put them away to remind herself that she wasn't crazy, that the slow loss of her voice wasn't in her head. She hadn't disappeared. She'd been cut out. She had told herself for years that holding on to that yellow binder was petty, an emotional detritus of a life she should have left in the past. Now it was different. It wasn't a record. It was a weapon made up of fact, her counterscript. That crazy speed dating evening, that evening set up to introduce her as Lonely Mary, giving it another shot, was her wake-up call. TLC thought they had their story, a lovesick lady careening her way through cringeworthy dates. What they actually had in their hands now was a woman with receipts. And Mary wasn't waiting for reunion specials and Uber-edited tell-alls. She was preparing to speak for herself. No studio filtering, no producer cues, no editing sleight of hand. Just her voice, her binder. "You want a love story?" she grumbled to herself as she flipped through the pages. Here's one, a woman who quit loving a man who couldn't see her and learned to love the truth instead. Her binder sat shotgun beside her on the drive home, buckled in like a co-pilot. And then her dashboard sprang to life. Hook, an email. Subject line, urgent, confidentiality review, pending, TLC legal. They already knew. They were attempting to silence her. But it was too late. Since one of the men she'd brushed off at speed dating had spotted her flash drive, he'd recognized her face. And that night, he started a Reddit post titled, "Mary's Real Truth is Coming. You won't believe what she has." It felt like another rumor fueled late into the night, another flippant post on some minor Sister Wives fan subreddit by a nameless user. Binder witness try two. But within hours, it went viral. Screenshots surfaced. A blurry image of Mary inside the archive room, a close-up of the Therapy Cutbacks 2017 label, and one photo taken from leaked on-set footage. Mary lying on the floor, yellow binder spread out, no makeup, no script, just genuine emotion. Hook, and that single photo rewrote history. Fans understood immediately what it was. Christine's binder had opened the door a crack many years ago. But Mary's blew it off the hinges. This wasn't the story of an irate ex-wife. This was the story of the witness, the one who had hung around the longest, the one who had seen it all. Within 24 hours, hashtags erupted worldwide. Mary Binder truth, she was erased. Let Mary speak. TMZ had it in the morning. People magazine splashed with a headline at lunch. TLC leapt to put up a statement on editing integrity and respecting all cast member stories. But the fans weren't deceived. They knew spin when they saw it. Mary's Instagram remained silent. No new posts, no comments, just one story. White background, black letters. "I never needed revenge, I just needed time." At the same time, Cody was outraged. He released a statement, one that was later removed within an hour, in which he accused Mary of weaponizing old pain for attention. The damage was done, however, all his milquetoast apologies he'd ever made. "Mary and I just drifted apart," were being brought into question. Fans asked the very real question, or did you shove her out and make room for Robin? When the internet erupted, Mary sat in quiet with a producer, not a TLC producer, but one from a rival network. No spin-off, no scripted special, just one honest, unfiltered sit-down. The title, Mary Uncut, The Lost Years. This time, she wasn't requesting permission, she was demanding it. But not everyone was going to give it to her, because whereas the world was in favor of Mary, one person sat by herself in a black bedroom rereading the very same Reddit post over and over. Robin. Her curtains were shut. Her cell phone illuminated the blackness. The photo of Mary in the archive room filled the screen. The words Therapy Cutbacks 2017 splashed across it like a ghost. She remembered that year clearly. It was the same year she'd begun conducting her own off-the-record therapy sessions in a secret TLC side budget. The same year she'd told a producer, Mary doesn't need therapy, she wants attention. That line had never aired. But if Mary had the archives, if she had that tape, everything needed to come crashing down that Robin had built. Her image as the empathetic peacemaker, the victim wife, the heart of the family, all of it could vanish overnight. Robin clenched her phone. The thought of Mary's truth flooding the internet made her pulse race. If Mary was going to tell her story, Robin would rewrite hers. She called her PR agent. Book it, she said, but this time I'm not crying. Hook. And then the war for truth went public. A few hours after that, TLC's public relations team was left in shock when Robin announced she would be doing a live Uncut appearance with a national morning show. Her own arrangement without the network. No crew, no editing, just Robin, a ring light, and a manila envelope. Things I've never said to you, she began, voice cold, because I believed keeping the family safe was like keeping the show on television. But if Mary wants to remake history, she waved the envelope. Then so will I. On camera in front of millions of viewers, Robin opened a letter, penned by Mary. It was 2014. Mary's own words. I'm sorry I've been distant. I'll try harder. Please let me come back. Robin faced the camera. She wants you to think she got pushed out, but this shows the truth. Mary walked out of herself. The web was split in two. Team Mary and Team Robin covered every comment page, but Mary didn't flinch, because she knew the letter wasn't embarrassing. It was old. Proof of who she was before she learned who she needed to become. She didn't need to erase the past. She just needed to prove it. And as Robin signed off from her broadcast with a happy smile, Mary was already moving on to a mini soundstage. A binder gripped in one hand, a microphone on her collar, no makeup, no glam team, no lights except one overhead. Just a woman, a binder, and the truth. 12 years, she addressed the silence. You saw what they wanted you to see, not what I lived. The camera arrived, slow, deliberate, respectful. Mary opened the binder to the first tab, labelled The Silence Contract. She brandished a printed 2015 email, a note from a producer, the red-marked text in bold, "Don't mention Robin's expenditures, Cody's absences, or private requests for counselling unless cleared ahead of time." Mary glared straight at the camera. "They told you were bitter," she said bluntly, "that you were negative. What they really meant, though, was that I made the story complicated." The camera remained focused on Mary's hands as she flipped to the next page, the family files. There were pictures that most people never looked at. Mary with the kids on birthday days Cody hadn't attended. Grocery store receipts that she'd paid out of her own pocket for months. Dozens of printed out text messages she'd sent that were never answered. "I never said anything," she answered softly, eyes still fixed on the page, "because I didn't want to sound bitter." Then her voice took on a pointed edge. "But silence is not grace. Silence is control." Hook. And with that, she opened the second chapter. The tab read The Isolation Loop. A raw, uncut clip streamed across the screen, footage that no one had ever seen. Mary asking for a quiet evening with Cody by herself, the two of them. He sighed audibly, leaned back in his chair, and muttered off camera, She just takes too much out of me." That clip never aired, but it had lived in her mind for years. "That line haunted me," she admitted. "It made me shrink. It made me apologize for being. It made me feel like I was the problem." She took a breath, looked straight into the lens, and stated clearly, "But not anymore. I'm done shrinking." She flipped another page over, a photo of her by herself at the family dinner for season 16, the photo that everyone remembered, except that she'd been edited out of the latest promo photo. "Even when I showed up," she panted, "they edited me out." Her eyes rose, cold and unflinching. "So now I'm showing up louder." Hook, and this time the world was willing to listen. The next page was called Mary Uncut. Dozens of sticky notes from the producers were within. "Smile more. No crying this take. Don't criticize Cody." Her hand trembled slightly as she held them aloft, but she didn't relent. "These weren't suggestions," she said. "They were orders that told me who I was allowed to be." Then she did something no one expected. Mary leaned back to an empty page. She grabbed a pen and wrote, "There, on live TV, no script, no okay," her own truth spilling out in the moment. "You wanted a disaster," she demanded, her voice firm and raw. "Then let this be the storm." Hook, and the storm broke right away. TLC executives panicked in the background. Robin was calling her PR people. Cody said nothing, but online, Mary's video had already gone viral. In 2 hours, it had been seen over 1 million times. But the gossip wasn't in the comments. The comments were filled with women everywhere, mothers, daughters, wives, sisters, writing their own narratives under hers. "I thought I was the only one." "I watched you vanish on TV, Mary. Thank you for coming back." "I've been quiet for years too." It wasn't sympathy, it was solidarity. Even some cast members who had worked on the show began speaking out anonymously, confirming that the binder was real, that entire storylines had been vaulted, and that Mary's footage had been edited to preserve the marketable narrative. The truth was out, and there was no stuffing it back. By morning, TLC released another statement, rehearsed, guarded, safe. "We encourage all of our cast members and their individual journeys, but the audience was already done with it. They didn't require apologies. They wanted authenticity." As ratings for TLC's next Sister Wives, Love After Plurality fell through the floor, the network freaked out. They came to Mary with a new offer, her own series, no cast, no fabricated storylines, just her. But Mary refused. "I'm not here to sell pain anymore," she said during a live stream to her new followers. "I'm here to show what happens after the pain is over." Hook, and that's when everyone realized this wasn't a comeback, it was a rebirth. Back at Coyote Pass, Robin slammed a notebook shut and called an emergency meeting. "She's stealing our audience," she hissed. But Cody just looked out the window. For the first time in years, he had nothing to say. Somewhere deep inside, he knew. This wasn't revenge, this was resurrection. The infamous speed dating fiasco, the one that TLC hoped would reduce Mary to a punchline, ultimately turned into its opposite. It was no longer remembered for the awkward belly laughs or for the stage-manufactured drama. It was remembered as the evening Mary ceased to look for validation. The evening she took it for herself. Over the next few weeks, Mary shipped the yellow binder, not to TLC, not to a publisher, not to a PR firm, but to a women's history archive in Utah. She attached a handwritten note. "This was once a collection of my pain. Now it's proof that I survived it." The final shot of her special dissolved in slowly. Mary alone on a deserted desert road. No ring, no entourage, no regrets, just peace. She was no longer the forgotten wife. She was a woman who had taken back her own name. The screen went black as the voice of the narrator brought the story to a close. "They told me it was a disaster, but maybe disaster is precisely what it seems when a woman stops waiting for permission to be." Fade out.